You are now entering Female Founder World with your host, Jasmine Garnsworthy.
Charlotte, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
So happy to meet you.
Okay, let's just dive into exactly what you're creating at Everyday Humans. For people who aren't super familiar with what you're building, could you give us a bit of an intro into the brand?
So who's Everyday Human? So what we are a pro-planet beauty brand that makes sunscreen with skincare benefits designed for everyday humans. So what we do is that we make better for you ingredients with planet-friendly packaging and ethical practices. And what we want to do is to keep your sunscreens inclusive and responsible, all for under $30. So I guess the beginning story was just, it's a pretty stupid story, but it's like I'm in my late 30s at the moment, and I used to tan. I'm from the Noughties. I used to tan a lot in my teens. Like, I think you're Australian,
Same.
so you get it. You like SPF-5, and actually I use freaking olive oil, whatever. Like, you want to get tan. It's like that whole era. And now massive regret. So now I'm sort of like in my 30s, and I really do see the first sign of aging. And I was like, dude, I wish someone had told me earlier the importance of taking care of my skin, and the most vital weapon against wrinkles is sunscreen. So as a busy human, you don't think about that step. And like, what we wanted to do is that because sunscreen is such a chore, you just like, it's like a nagging mom thing. Like, what if we can actually make sunscreen not just like a must-have step at the end, but incorporate into your daily routine so that it integrates like seamlessly. So what we do is make better for you formulations with sustainably sourced and upcycled ingredients. So, we are certified plastic neutral, certified climate neutral, and like our entire portfolio uses 100% recycled plastic or biodegradable packaging. So it's like really safe and kind to the planet. So yeah,
Wow.
what we really want to do is to make sunscreen for the Gen Z, and I guess I call them zillennials. So it's like 25 to 35, that kind of positioning where you're just maybe out of college. You kind of need to graduate from your drugstore stuff, but you don't want to spend stuff on like a La Mer or anything. So you just want sort of an in between. So we make like an authentic and relatable positioning with an affordable price point that has currently not been really served in sort of the traditional sunscreen market.
Oh, okay. There is so much I want to talk about in there. But first, let's give people a bit of context. I think it's always awesome to hear what your background is professionally and how you came to entrepreneurship, because we have all different kinds of backgrounds and stories on the show. And I think that it just, really shows that anyone from any background can kind of do this if you've got the right idea and, you're savvy. So tell us about your career. How did you get to entrepreneurship?
So my first job ended up in investment banking. So I was actually my first job was KPMG. I was in M&A due diligence for a year. And then afterwards, I worked at Macquarie, which is an Australian investment bank, and Credit Suisse to do equity capital markets and syndicate, which is just basically IPOing companies. I market companies that go on IPO. So that's what I did. So I did that, and I think I did it until I was 27, and I was just like, oh man, like grind is like tough, and I just wanted to take the plunge, and I wasn't senior enough to have, we call them golden handcuffs, like because my salary wasn't like extreme that I can just leave. I just decided to take the plunge and join a startup and just move away from corporate life altogether. And I think I changed careers like 1,000 times. Like, it's crazy. So it's been like a decade or so. So it's like I started off in building social communities with an app. I started a magazine before. I sold digital billboard ad spaces. I work in operations for a high-end jewelry company. And then I ended up like picking up like random like consultancy jobs for like, marketing and distributing in indie brands, and just like went through this whole thing. And what I found, I think my strength is really like, I really love entrepreneurship. I think that's what it is. Like, it gets me really excited to build something from nothing. And I found that I really, really like young customers. Like, I think selling to young people is my thing. And I just like plunged right into it. And that was 2017, 2018 when I started the first iteration of my brand. But my family's in, sustainable packaging. So like my dad has a material science company that creates like, solutions for plastic waste. So sustainability is such a huge part of my life that I was like, well, if I could create my own brand, surely I want to make a sustainable brand. So I guess it's like sort of like a family thing.
I want to dig into like some of that stuff around sustainability for sure. But first, something that you said that was really interesting to me is that you feel most comfortable like creating a brand or marketing to a younger consumer. And I think a lot of people get hung up on creating products for a demographic that's not them. And so I'm wondering, like, why do you think that is? And like, also, why is that consumer different to like how you and I might shop in our?
I think the younger customer has they know, I think the word woke is not a nice word anymore, but I think
Mm,
younger customers really want authenticity in the representation of the brand. So maybe a millennial or an older person's like, hey, if a celebrity talks about it, the press mentioned about it, and I have a couple of friends talk about it, I'll probably buy it. And I've seen it in a store, I'll probably, yeah, I'll freaking try it, right? Whatever. You don't really do the due diligence on like the ethnic, so not the sort of ethical practices
mhm.
there, if they actually contribute to causes, or like do they actually care about being pro planet. So I think what these are all things that I personally care about, and I realize like the newest set of consumers, they want a brand that has a bit more meaning than just sell fast 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 and like easy peasy pick it up, and they want to buy a brand that actually means something and resonate to them on a sort of a on a personal level. And I think that's the difference between sort of like I wouldn't say it's more a mindset as opposed to an age. So we always call it a Gen Z Zillennial brand. No, it's actually a mindset of like, hey, I want a brand that means something to me deeper than the product itself. I want it to be part of like my interior or my personality that reflects what I choose or how I live life.
In terms of the channels and where to reach them, how to talk to them, are you heavy on TikTok? Are you doing SMS marketing? What are the ways that you're kind of reaching this customer?
I mean, we started off as a pretty wholesale heavy brand. So I come from a traditional background. So for me, it's just like distribution is really key. So when we launched the brand, we already secured Sephora and Ulta. So it was really fortunate that, we have such great retailers to back us up. And of course, it's like, hey, now that we're in these awesome retailers, like how do we speak to people? So I think you asked me like, what is my launch tactic at the very beginning? So we really launched at the worst time, like May 2020, beginning of COVID, 2 weeks after Black Lives Matter, and we just got these two big accounts. We're like, oh crap, like how are we going to do this in a digital environment? And we were really bootstrapping, and we didn't have a budget on paid ads and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I have a lot of inventory. So maybe what I'm going to do in the most cost effective way is just freaking send stuff to people. So that was what I did at the beginning. It sounds really like whatever, but like that was like I just seeded a lot. So I started off with like a really big repository of like micro influencers. Like we're like, okay, we know who our cohorts of people are, and then we like build out a database with like people with like the micros, under 10,000, and the midweight under 50,000, and the macros like whatever, like so on and so forth. And what we did was just reach out to them and be like, hey, we got a new brand, like do you want to receive a product? And we didn't really have like, I mean, I guess we're not super savvy with paid. So we're like, oh, we just want to send you a product and see how it goes with no strings attached. And we didn't even ask for a commitment. And we really spend a lot of time with an unboxing experience where we like make it really like exciting, colorful and like really Instagrammable. At that point, not TikTok. TikTok wasn't that big, but like just like we want to create an experience where if you get the box, so you really want to share it. And we were able to do so. So we send up like I think like 200-300 boxes like for like each month during the launch 3 months. And the response was so good because we just spent a lot of time on making it exciting and that people want to share. And we just got a lot of organic sort of like seeding or like organic word of mouth from that. And it just kind of like snowballed from there. It's a trial and error, and it's kind of like going on dates, right? So I guess I did go on like 600 dates. So and then you ended up with like a few good ones, and you're like, oh, these are really nice. You can build a relationship, and then you just sort of start from there.
Are you finding that influencer gifting and influencer partnerships are still a big part of your marketing strategy now, or has it kind of
100%.
shifted?
No,
Yeah.
100%. I think like I think like influencer marketing is a must-have. You cannot not work with influencers. But I think what's different from maybe like a couple of years ago and now is that influencers now have many tiers. You've got your micros or even nanos, which are like really just everyday people, but they just really want to share and they just really want to talk about the product. And then you've got like actual influencers who have a little bit more following, but they still have a very small audience, and they can really have a high engagement within the community. You've got the macros that gets a lot of eyeballs. So now the tiering is different and the way you play the strategy is really different. Previously it's maybe just one kind of influencers. You just got people with eyeballs or whatever it is. Now it's like you need to, when you do influencer strategies, there's just so many ways to slice and dice the data, how you're writing the briefs, how you're spending the budget, and how you're building this relationship, and it gets a little bit more complex.
Interesting. I love hearing you talk about that. And also like the different ways to like slice the data as well. I think that a lot of people kind of like just go in there and they think, oh, they've got X amount of followers and they like beauty, so I'm just going to gift
Nope.
them.
Nope, that's not the way. And I think it's also like, I think it's also knowing your audience as well. So obviously for me, it's like I need to talk to people who love sunscreen and like in skincare. But like once you sort of hit that demographic, you also need to test and learn others. So let's say maybe, generally obviously outdoorsy people is something that we should speak to. So it's like you need to create a test and learn approach to know like besides your core audience is what other places you can hit and then try and test and like it's just like a constant search of humans like kind of resonating with your brand. So if you know who you are, it's really easy to find those people. But if you don't know who you are and you're like, I'm making something for everyone, yes, my brand's for everyday humans, but we don't make it for everyone because not everyone's going to love you. That's just how it is. So
Yeah.
you just kind of need to know who you're not as well. More you need to know a lot about who you are, but you also really need to know who you're not. I think that's really important.
How are you like recording, externalizing those learnings, collating that information? Where does that go? And how are you like either communicating it to team members or keeping it for yourself and making those like inferences from the information? Like, what is that process and what kind of documentation are you creating?
I mean, you're asking me about resource recommendations. So we build an entire company off Notion. So it's like a really robust workplace that we brainstorm, build strategy. It's like a central repository of information that we use. And then so it's like when we have team, every single call is recorded, or like at least we have call notes on every single meeting, every strategy is put in place. And it's like, and we have a test and learn approach, meaning like every month we look through the data and see, hey, okay, this is working, this isn't, like, what are we going to shift our budget? How are we going to see that? So every month we review it. And then obviously on a weekly basis, we do team check-in. So, I mean, because we're a remote working team, so we talk a lot on the phone. So, and in order for us to not have all those thoughts lost, we put everything into one place. So so everybody can refer back should they get confused. So yeah, we have like
Mm.
weekly brainstorms, uh, you know, there's just a lot, like every department have their own like version of their sort of like brainstorming, or like we call it like whiteboarding sessions. So that you can like throw out ideas and say, hey, this week we want to talk about social media, like what have you seen lately? So we have like not a trend Monday, whatever. We don't have a name for it, but it's like, hey, like let's like this week we need to throw in some ideas and we capture all of them. Or we have a shared sort of like Instagram account where we paste cool things that we like and we just chuck them all in. And then when
Mm.
we have this repository of information, then we take it and be like, hey, remember Charlotte shared this thing, or like this other team member shared this thing in this database. Let's pull it and like take advantage of it and like maybe apply it to one of the strategies. So that's sort of how we do it. But Notion is like where the thinking comes and the strategy comes. And then afterwards we use Asana, where when the thinking is complete, then we do project management and task mapping with a responsible party, like an RP, we call it an RP, and like a timeline. So it's like really structured. So things don't get lost. So there's always like thinking. Once thinking is complete, it goes into a project gets tasked.
Okay, I would love to just like follow you for a day and understand how you're using these different
It's
tools.
pretty
It just
nerdy.
sounds it sounds like so well organized. I think a lot of people are really lost in this creative process and they're not yeah, they're definitely not following that kind of structured approach. That sounds awesome. And I also love Notion. Notion is the best.
Yeah, it changed
Such a
my
great
life.
tool.
Like it really changed my life.
There's also like a bunch of free courses that you can do online as well. And like they've got amazing templates if you're just getting started. But anyway, I want to shift gears and I want to talk about wholesaling. And you are in Target, Ulta, Sephora, somewhere else as well, Beauty Bay. And I want to understand like how does a brand go from an idea into this mass distribution? Is it really just these buyers and category managers are finding you through your influencer posts? Are you doing lots of outreach? Are you working with an agent or a distributor? How does that work and how has that all come about?
I think we're really lucky because we're just in this like I think it's the right time and the right place. So I don't really pitch that much. Like we get a lot of inbounds. So we're just really fortunate to have that interesting place where people are actually looking for millennial, zillennial sunscreen for some odd reason, just for the past couple of years. And people just find us on social and they're just like, hey, we're the buyer. I was like, are you really the buyer? And I'm like, oh my God, it is really the buyer. I was like, it's shocking sometimes. And we don't really do a lot of outreaches, but, and we don't have an agent or anything. It's just us with a PowerPoint, and that's pretty much it. So I came from the Target Accelerator program. So I graduated in 2019, where pre-COVID, where we had in real life accelerator style. So I was one of 10 brands that got picked in 2019. And I was like the only Asian person. And I was also the only non-American in the program. So that was really cool. When I went there, I was like, wow,
Mm.
like my eyes were open because I haven't lived in the States for so long. So like half of the things I'm like, oh wow, I freaking don't know. Like I don't know Amazon. They're like, you don't know Amazon? I was like, I actually
Yeah.
don't. Like it's like random culture shock, and like going through that program and learning what it takes to win in big box retail, like really sort of gave us the confidence to build. So that's why I started from scratch again. And I was like, okay, I know what it takes to win. Now we're going to start all over again, build everyday humans, and then hence we were able to go to market with really a big couple of big retailers to start.
So you are doing SPF products with like skincare benefits, and I'm seeing a lot of, I don't know, like this kind of like shift towards a lot of body care products that have skincare like ingredients and
That's
skincare
right.
like functionality, and makeup now with skincare functionality. What Euphoria are doing is really cool. And I'm just like, how are you thinking about this trend? And do you see any white space in terms of, similar categories or other kind of products that haven't been innovated and that could use like that skincare tilt to it that you think is like quite interesting?
I think
And I'm putting you
everything's
on the
already
spot.
Yeah, I think everything's
Everything's
up
done.
already. I mean, I think there's still a lot of opportunity in hair care because there are quite a few players
Mm,
now that's coming abroad, but maybe there are more room to play and like sort of functional hair care because I think what they're saying hair care is the next skincare. It's like another category. Or
yeah.
toothpaste, like those everyday items where toothpaste can also be potentially a place to play, which I have friends who are doing it, awesome brands. And I think it's just like interesting to see that, as you open your bathroom cabinet, like each and every one of these FMCG brands can be taken out and rebranded,
Hmm.
make it a little bit more authentic, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more multi-purpose to and be able to replace. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Hair care with skincare like properties. That's really interesting. Because I guess I look at the hair care space at the moment, and it does seem like there's a lot going on,
Yeah, the
but
big
I
Aussie
can't point
brand,
to
what's it
any.
called? Monday? The Aussie brand.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we're seeing this shift in beauty altogether. So like skincare, body care, and hair care, where we spent, I don't know, 5 years maybe really drilling down on what's not in the product. Like it's safe because these things aren't in there. And I think that that's table stakes now. So that now we're back in this kind of marketing era of, but we're adding all of these things in. Look at all the cool ingredients that are in here. Look at like the actives that are in this product, which I think is really interesting.
But I think the other thing is I call it supply chain sustainability. I think a lot of people are trying to be sustainable, but it's really difficult to do so because you need to really start from the very beginning. So we're just very fortunate that we always built a brand with that foundation. And that's why we do a lot of due diligence to define what supply chain sustainability means to us, which is really managing your environmental and social impact on across our networks, which is like suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, and even like customers in line, like the end use. So I think like as we grow, as more and more brands are coming through, your skincare is already as anything with skincare benefits or like sexy ingredients. I think it's also table stakes. I think the next big thing is sustainability, and that is, I think, quite a lot more difficult to innovate because there are a lot of limitations to it. So yeah, so I think that's like the next big thing.
That's interesting. Talk me through what the process is to really make sure that your entire supply chain is sustainable. Like what is that process? You obviously have like the family connection there. I know, for example, that even just looking for trying to find post-consumer recycled plastic is like quite difficult.
Yes, it is.
How do you do all this?
So I think the easiest is actually packaging. So when we started, we were all right. Let's start with packaging because, like, at a
Mhm.
minimum, I like if you're creating a product, you need to think about the end life. So like, how is that piece of plastic that you're creating or a piece of cardboard that you're creating actually contributes to, climate change? So I was like, all right, well, at a minimum, I want to use if I'm creating a new product or a new piece of thingy, hopefully I can use something that it was from sort of a waste, right? So what we do is that we start with post-consumer recycled plastic. What that means is that we use plastic that has been, disposed, and we use the components of it and it make them into something new. So there is a circular economy, like a basis of it, right? Then we're like, okay, well, there's the plastic tube. What about, the labels? Or like, how about your, unit cartons? Then you're like, okay, all of our unit cartons is like FFC certified. We use soy ink as an example. All of our laminates are biodegradable. Like, we got all the way down to like really nitty gritty, like our stickers are
Wow.
dissolvable. All of our things are certified. So we're like, okay, if we want to go down that route, we're going to go all in. So that's on the packaging side. And then, of course, like we want to explore like refillables. We want to explore, paper packaging and aluminiums. But of course, like there is limitations on what we do in sunscreen, because sunscreen has an active ingredient that is not like, it needs to house in a non-sunlight environment so that it doesn't degrade. So maybe in other formats, like maybe balms or like some other liquids may work well, or like solids usually work much better in like paper or alum. But like for what we do, it's the stability is going to be an issue. So it's like learning all of those bits and pieces on what my limitations are and what I can do at my best is like, okay, this is what I can offer right now, and I'll continue to do research and innovate. So that's just on the packaging side, right? Then we go into the ingredient side. So ingredient side for me, it's like, well, I want to be able to find sustainably sourced ingredients to start with. So that's really hard. So we're like, okay, active ingredients for sunscreen is, you've got your, organic, and there's your physical. But like, what if we start innovating on the other ingredients as well, and like look at do the due diligence of raw material suppliers? So what we started to do is to incorporate upcycle ingredients. So what exactly is like upcycle ingredients? Basically, I think it's the new frontier of sustainable skincare. And so what we do is like we save commercial byproducts from like plants, flowers, fruits, vegetables that usually are discarded and or like sort of like become like commodity waste. And what you do is that you give them a second lease of life. So in the traditional manufacturing process, like nearly every step yields waste. So it's like from cultivating plant, extracting the plant, or just waste from making stuff. So what we want to do is to find ways to upcycle those ingredients so that waste doesn't end up in a landfill and can actually be transformed and utilized. So I know it's really nerdy, but like we started off with
So
our cleanser.
interesting.
Thank you. But like most people don't care, but I care a lot about it. So I was like, I'm going to make all my products to have an upcycle ingredient. So we're actually about to launch our mineral sunscreen called Rose from Above. So this is embargoed for April 18th. So excited about this. So this is what
Beautiful.
we've reformulated our mineral sunscreen base. So what it has is like hero ingredient is actually upcycled rose. So what we did is that we found, a supplier that's able to actually use exhausted rose. So basically it's a rose water distilled from exhausted rose petals that boasts like awesome skin priming benefits. Like, so what it does is reduce fine lines, it retains moisture, but the product, like the oil itself, came from a sustainable process called upcycling. So what we do is like every
Mm.
single ingredient that we're going to go for, our hero ingredient, needs to have that component, and that's how we're doing PD from now on. So I think it's like really interesting because on the supplier side, they're also hurriedly trying to do innovation and like create these things. And like on the company level or the brand level, it's like finding those innovation and actually incorporating it into PD at an early stage, which is that makes sense for your brand. You can't just like throw some stuff in, but it needs to have like a longevity to it, or at least a long-term plan of why you're doing it. So I think that's really important.
How do you find these suppliers? Where are you going to source folks
I
that
mean,
specialize in
my
this?
PD person does it. So my product development
Yeah.
lead is like, she is a cosmetic chemist. She came from Shiseido. Like, she knows her stuff. So and I invigorated her and be like, we care about sustainability. Let's find the most sustainable source. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna get 1,000 calls. We did it, and then we're like, oh my god, this is the innovation set us, because of her previous relationship she's built. Like, we were able to find suppliers that are able to show us innovation where maybe it launches only 2024 or much later on, and at least be able to give us a test batch, whatever it is, and actually try it on our batch formula. So it's like really cool to have that relationship with the supplier, the raw material and ingredient suppliers, and be able to do that while like seeing all the
Mm.
innovation incorporated into it. It's not just like randomly put things together.
Wow, that's so interesting. I have to ask, and I'm really curious about, you said that you started in 2018, you kind of
Mhm.
had like a relaunch into 2020, which I'm guessing is like post the accelerated program that you did. How were you? I know you're bootstrapped as well, and this is an expensive kind of process to find all of these suppliers and to be really intentional around sustainability and while also creating your own formulas. How were you funding the business like really early on? Did you have some friends and family money in there? Were you just putting in your own savings? Like, how did you think about that in the early days?
I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, I had savings, but it's obviously depleted it, So,
Yeah.
so at the beginning it was hard because like that's why I need to make every buck work for me because I have all everything to lose. So I'm not like, you know, just kind of winging it and I'm not making
Hmm.
small amounts. So when I started the brand, I had 4 SKUs to start with and then MOQs are so high. Like I don't have a choice to fail, like I just cannot fail. So I think that because of the table stakes involved, so I'm super careful on how I distribute, how I build the foundations of the brand so that there is scalability. And that's why we're at this really nice, comfortable place where I still don't have like institutional investors and we'll be cash flow positive, which is like we're in a really nice
Wow.
place where we don't have to worry too much because of the clients that we have, right? But of course, like like I think not a lot of people have a lot of a fortunate or unfortunate, whatever it is, like maybe it's a different circumstance, but I always think that you can start within your scope. And I always think bootstrapping is the best way to do so. I think raising a lot of money to start a brand has its pros and cons. I think the pros, obviously, you can build a team really quickly, you can hire the best agencies, and then you can come up with something really fast. But maybe sometimes doing it the hard way, which is what we're all doing over here in your podcast, is you want to test it, have a product market fit before you scale. And I think that would build a much longer, like there's a much bigger longevity to something like that than to just throw money at the problem, see if it sticks, and then it might just like crash and burn.
Wow, that is awesome advice. I want to shift into chatting about some of the tools. You've mentioned Notion and Asana, but if there's anything else that you're using in your business, whether it's, someone that you think is great for capturing reviews or a Shopify plugin, something that is kind of helping power the business.
We use Okendo if you're talking about reviews. I think there's just two
Hmm.
players actually in the market. So Okendo has been really nice. They have a widget that you can show the reviews on the landing page, and you can obviously share it with your wholesale partners, so on and so forth. And then for email, I think everybody uses Klaviyo these days. So Klaviyo has more flexibility than the other competitor, and it's really great for segmentation. We actually haven't started SMS marketing, but I know Klaviyo has something on the back end that you can start with that. But we were looking to experiment it next month, actually, so I can let you know how that's going. And I mean, our business is so wholesale focused that our D2C tech stack is pretty lame. like honestly, it's not as sophisticated as a lot of my peers who are like like their entire 80% of their business come from D2C. Ours is like very balanced. We're like 50-50. Most actually now it's 60-40. Like most of it is wholesale, and then there's a bit of a mix of like indie channels. We have indie retailers. We have Asia retailers, and then we have the wholesale accounts, and then we have like a little bit of D2C, and then now we have Amazon. So what I try to do is I call it, I mean, super nerdy. It's like I want a good cash conversion cycle, meaning I don't want to get locked up. I don't want single retailer risk, and I want good cash conversion cycle. What that means is that I don't want to rely on one person, so that if that person
Hmm.
pulls the plug, I'm dead. So then what we want to do is to diversify our revenue streams so that like even if one big thing get plugged out, like you have other places that can actually fill your revenue. And then the second about cash conversion cycles. So you think that Target and Ulta, they're all great and all, but they pay really slowly. So you need to know
Hmm.
and manage your cash flow so that when you have those moments where you're fronting the money, and then you sold it, but you have to wait for the people to pay you back, then you don't have that cash to be able to actually do your SG&A or the operating expenses. So then you need to be able to manage your expenses so that and be able to time your income coming in if you don't have an investor to be able to not have that like this like cliff
Hmm.
and you have this cash hole and then you only have, maybe you have to wait 60 days, 90 days, but your staff needs to get paid, people needs to get paid. So you need to be able to learn how to mitigate those risks and fill those holes so that you consistently have enough money to be able to survive.
And are you filling those holes by basically making sure that you are, yeah, how are you filling those holes? Is it just around like the different order time and the payment schedule for the different retailers that you're
Yeah.
working
So
with?
it's like,
Is it that the e-com's big enough? Like, how do you do that?
so I mean, I think one thing you can do, you can start with a supplier, right? So you can like, negotiate better payment terms. Of course, it really is hard at the beginning because nobody's going to
Mm.
give you favorable payment terms until you scale. So we're at that place where we're like, hey, we've been together for a while, you got to cut us some slack. That's cool. But I think it's hard at the beginning, so a little bit harder. So then it's more like, having an Amazon or Shopify business where obviously the payment comes immediately. So have enough of that to be able to mitigate those risks, and really just controlling your expenses, the most important part. It's like, don't hire or like don't spend the money if you can't, like if you are unable to do so. And at least if you do want to front the money to fuel your growth, you need to be able to have calculated risks so that you're not overspending for a future revenue number that may not actually exist. So you need to be really safe on your forecast. But of course, again, like because I'm in a bootstrap company, it's really different. So if you're a funded company, it's a completely different way of seeing things, where they're like growth stage. So you like splash money, right? And you throw a lot of money and just see what sticks. So it's a really, and then you obviously hire the best, spend the best, and then see how it goes. And of course, your trajectory of growth would be, like much faster, but obviously your chances of failure is also really high. So it's like, I guess it's like understand your risk profile. So as you can probably even see, like I am relatively risk averse, or at least I'm very careful. I believe in sustainable growth over like hockey stick growth. So it's just a different
Mhm.
way of building a business. So there's no right or wrong answer. Like some people love it to go all in. I'm just like I'd rather build a brand that lasts and is sustainable, so I don't crash and burn.
Wow. I would love to just go to a business class that you teach. Could you just do a workshop with us?
I mean, it's not. I mean, like if you
I
told my
love the way
finance
that you
manager, like,
think about it. You have such good, like, you've both got the breadth and also like the level of detail of understanding around like the different areas of your business. And it just, the way that you are approaching everything like so intentionally, I think is really impressive. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people can learn from it.
awesome.
The last question that I wanted to ask you, and I ask everyone who comes on the show, it's just for a resource. And usually it's a book or a podcast or something that the founders who come on listen to or read, and it's just kind of like helped them be better leaders in their businesses. Is there something that you could recommend?
I just talk to really amazing people, actually. Like I always look up to. Yeah, actually, that's weird that I don't have a recommend. I guess I'll start. I need to start like listening to all of your podcasts because I'm sure I'm going to learn so much out of it. But I just don't have time to listen.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of like resource recommendation, but like inspiration.
Go resource
Uh,
recommendations. We like if it's like more of a tactical, tangible kind of tool, let's do it. People love that kind of stuff.
like what are the things that I've been using that's really effective? Like it's some of them just doesn't apply here. Like like factoring, like boring stuff. Like PO financing and like forecasting models. Like it's not exciting.
This is
Okay.
not boring stuff. This is hard. This is the information that's hard to get. This is the stuff that you can't Google. So if you can like share anything like that, that's helpful.
Oh, I guess like debt financing. I don't know if people care about learning about that, but like there's a lot of ways for you to raise money. It doesn't have to be through equity, it can be through debt. So you have ways, there's like a couple of ways to do it. There's like factoring, there's revolving credit, there's debt financing. So God, hearing myself, it's so boring.
No,
But
it's
like
not.
yeah, so factoring means PO financing, meaning if you have an order, you can actually borrow on top of it. So if your creditor, if the buyer has, let's say, an A grade, we call them A grade, buyer, which is kind of like a Target and Ulta, you can borrow up to 90% of your purchasing order. So you can actually borrow money if you get an order and be like, hey, person or bank or whatever, like I need some money to be able to fund my cash flow. Here's my invoice. Take them and front me the money before it gets into my account. So that's factoring. And then you've got revolving credit, which is, it's kind of like acts as like a credit card. So, but you apply it through your accounts receivables or your existing inventory. So then what you can do is that, okay, well, if the creditor or like the revolving credit facility would be able to evaluate how big your business is, and then they will give you a credit line. So that's like another way to access cash. And then the third is debt finance. So debt finance is a little bit harder because you need to have quite a bit of top line for the facility to work for you. So generally, I think you need, at least in where I'm from, like you need at least a couple of $1 million of top line consistently, and quite a few purchasing orders from the same client to be able to access that facility. But like once you get that access as well, like you can actually borrow quite a lot without having to give out any equity. So I just think there's just so many ways to find money, and it doesn't have to be this whole sexy freaking institutional investors and all that stuff. But of course, like if you have friends and family, that's always just the best way to go about at the very beginning. And like if you have friends who really believe in your cause and be able to support you at the very beginning, like that's a really nice way to start.
That's great advice. I actually did want to talk about something else. I just looked down at my notes while you were chatting there. And you're one of the few beauty founders you're not like in your TikTok videos, you're not like fronting the brand. Talk me through like A, why? I'm sure I understand why. And also like B, what you're doing instead, because I think a lot of founders don't want to do it, but they just see it driving sales and they kind of feel like trapped into this cycle of being the chief content creator and the face of the brand, as well as trying to run the business on the back end.
Well, I mean, I'm all about, as you can probably tell, I'm all about maximizing my productivity, and that is not the best use of my time. That's really, I mean, yeah, I can film content all day, but like I have so many other things that I need to do, and surely I should have used my time to do the big stuff, not making content. That's just my choice. But the other end of the spectrum, which is my personal level, like my husband will probably divorce me if I do that. I have a conservative South African husband who was like, you cannot do this. It's so embarrassing to the family. You're not going to go on camera. I was like, I agree. That is true. So I'm very like relatively private person, and like just talking like to a really big audience is like one-on-one with you is really nice, but like with a big audience, it's like, I can't do this, and I just like, it's not my thing. And
it's not for everyone.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of brands or a lot of people get pressured into doing it because it is the fastest way for you to grow at the very beginning. But then if you don't innovate, because you're not infinitely scalable, like so you need to find ways to scale this, and that's why you get stuck because like, oh shit, oh crap, sorry, you can't scale yourself. Oh, you can say, okay. So yeah, you can't actually scale yourself. So if content is such a big part of your revenue driver, how are you going to scale that? It's not possible. Like you can, there's a cap. There's always a cap, right? So, but it will give you a much faster head start, because if I had started with my face, probably it will be a lot faster, but I would probably be very tired. Like I just can't keep up with it. I just like, it's not for me.
Okay, so what, if you're not doing it in the early days, like what does your content creator kind of community look like? Do you have a social media manager who's creating the content? Do you have kind of like an army of content creators that you have, that you're paying for videos? Like, how do you think about it if it's not you?
I mean, I'm still figuring it out at the moment. Like we're good at going to Wholesale, like we're good at the business side, but I'm still figuring out the marketing side at the moment. So at the moment, I've told you about, we started with influencers and then building those relationships, and then like sort of like giving, giving opportunities to maybe like, providing internships so that we can get content creators to help us out. And then just having a network of people instead of just one face. Like, I think some people really like that singular voice, but I don't think it's necessary. Some brands can do it really well. You have a constant Rolodex of cast that's coming in and out, but actually shows inclusivity as well. And you have different points of view. So maybe some people resonate with your face, or some people resonate with my face. So maybe there is a test and learn approach that you can do so that you have a variety. So it's not pigeonholed. But of course, it's like, there's different ways of doing things. Maybe you're really good at, this particular cohort with your face, and you should just double down on it. And maybe you can find somebody who looks like you, speaks like you, and scale that, right? So, but it's hard.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we still struggle, because it's so hard to find somebody who is your brand without being you. So how do you
Yeah.
do that? And no matter how many times I cast that person, it's just not 100%. But like, because I made that choice, I was like, all right, I have to have somebody who's not perfect and just like roll with it and
Yeah.
diversify, right?
Yeah. And figure it out over time too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This was such a great conversation. I think this is the longest podcast I've ever done just
Oh
because
my
you were
gosh.
amazing.
I'm so sorry. Like it took like an hour.
No,
I
you're
apologize.
amazing. Like I just kept having questions for you. I think everyone's going to really love this episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.